I appreciate it, as I said in my opening statement, your willingness to hold this hearing. In 2013, there was an article in the Emory International Law Review calling for an international investigation into mass atrocity crimes against Rohingya Muslims. I know this because one of my staff members, Rachel Wagley, actually published the article. Sadly, everything written then is just as pertinent today, and this was back in 2013. It's heartbreaking how little the conflict has changed. And Ms. Gittleman, you wrote that even if an investigation is conducted, we cannot wait for a formal finding of genocide to take action. I agree. What are the obstacles to establishing an international investigation? Where is the United Nations? And how do you believe the U.S. should leverage its influence in these to disperse some sort of international investigation?
Well, thank you for the question, Representative Wagner. I think this is a really important issue. The reason why we might not have sufficient information in order to make a legal declaration about the situation is because it's so difficult to access the areas of northern Rakhine State where the military has been committing these crimes. There has been a fact-finding mission that was created by the United Nations Human Rights Council. So far, the Burmese government has resisted any efforts to cooperate with that mission to allow them to undertake their investigation in a way that would get them the access that they require. I think the situation now, in the face of denials and obstacles placed by the Burmese government, there requires a greater push internationally for an independent investigation. And I think the United States is well placed as one of the key players, both on the Security Council and as one of the forces that I think would help mobilize more support for an international investigation. This would be an extremely important next step.
It's been going on, well, for 60 years, but for 5 years now with Rohingya Muslims. Well past time. Ms. Gittleman or Mr. Sullivan, we hear so many stories of rape and sexual abuse coming out of Burma, and you outlined some of that, Ms. Gittleman. The Bangladesh embassy has reported that many of the Rohingya flowing into Bangladesh are women and children. Can you talk about the risks facing women and girls in Rakhine State and help us understand how the international humanitarian response can better confront sexual violence?
Sure. I'll address quickly and then turn to my colleague. What we've seen from people who have fled such horrific violence and who have come into Bangladesh, many have shared stories of use of rape and other forms of sexual violence. And the way that they describe these crimes being committed makes it appear that they are being done systematically, that it is being used as a weapon specifically against women and girls, against Rohingya women and girls. That this is not ad hoc, this isn't something extraneous, it certainly isn't part of any kind of counterinsurgency operation. Mm-hmm. And this is something that has been, we've heard stories from people from across different geographic areas, which leads us to believe this might be something that is quite widespread. So if you imagine women and girls fleeing from their homes, seeing horrific violence, being subjected to sexual violence, running, getting over the border, which may take days or weeks, once they arrive with very little possessions, little money, then they need to set about accessing the kind of health care and services that they would require. And you can only imagine how daunting that must be for people who have experienced so much trauma. So there needs to be assistance to make sure that those many people can get the aid that they need.
You know, and let me just jump in here because I have limited time, and I have another question that I want to make. Thank you very much. It's just horrific. I am so disappointed and angered, frankly, by Suu Kyi's actions or lack of actions. To whoever can best answer, has she made some sort of agreement with the Burmese military to enable violence against Rohingya? Does she have any political room whatsoever to provide any moral leadership at this point with respect to the Rohingya? Surely other minorities in the country can sympathize with the plight of the Rohingya. Please.
Yeah, I can't speculate as to what her motivations are, and I share the disappointment. But the fact is she does have a powerful voice, and she was voted in overwhelmingly has lots of support that she can garner. And just quickly on your previous question, I would just point to, as I mentioned in my testimony, was in Bangladesh a few months ago, and Refugees International released a report at that time in July, based on on what had happened since the influx of 87,000 Rohingya after October 2016, and talk about the gender-based violence and the accounts that we heard. And so you can only imagine that today, with over 400,000,
Right.
approaching 500,000 now, what level of a challenge that is. And there were doctors from the UN just yesterday or the day before who came out and talked about documenting dozens of cases.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.